Hey, this is Tony C. of the Morning Rush. Here's an interview Joe Shuta did for The Rush on Cumberland's ESPN Radio.
My guest on the Rush Friday feature is the answer to the trivia question, named the last Major League pitcher to win 30 games. Denny McLain, thank you for taking the time to talk baseball when there is no Major League Baseball.
First of all, thank you for the appearance. And then my personal opinion is that they're not going to play. I just can't imagine them playing on any kind of structure, being able to do what they're trying to do. The revenue sharing thing, I don't think our union will ever go for that. I can't imagine them going for that because everybody's got a contract. Everybody's been guaranteed their percentage of their contract this year because there is another clause in most of our major league contracts that says in the event of a shortened season, you will be prorated, which is fine. I don't think anybody's got an argument with that. But for this guy, what's his name, then down in Tampa Bay?
Blake Snell.
Yeah, I mean, to come out with that kind of an attitude is just absolutely stupid. You want to talk about it, you don't tell everybody how mad you are and that you're worth so much money and it's a dangerous health situation. We all know how dangerous it is. My God, there's 100,000 people that are dead. We know that. You do not have to participate. Nobody said because you are now a Cy Young Award winner that you are required to wear a Major League uniform or show up at Tampa Bay or show up anywhere and play Major League Baseball. So don't play, but you don't have to come out and put such a bad taste in everybody's mouth. The worst part about this is the way he said it in such a negative, nasty fashion that it kind of puts the salt on the wound. He permeated the entire negotiation process, and all of a sudden now we got fans talking about, well, they're greedy and selfish again. They're this and this. The players are not greedy. They're not selfish. They have to live by the same contract that the owners signed. This was all negotiated. It was all signed. It was sealed. It was delivered. I just can't imagine how much negativity that this kid has put into the game now. You know, listen, winning a Cy Young does not make you the greatest pitcher of all time, and it does not give you the authority to try to speak on behalf of everybody.
Attendance has been declining, and viewership on TV is declining. So what does Major League Baseball need to do?
It's a good question, and I'll tell you this. Last year, we had one of the worst springs for attendance that we've had in a long time. When it rains, they don't go to the ballpark. The rain is kind of a stopper for everybody. I don't care if it's an indoor or outdoor stadium. Rain has something to do with people going to a ball game. We had the worst spring in a long time. Detroit, God, we had rain day after day after day. And then, of course, it got cold in early June. It was just a bad year for weather. Yes, attendance has declined a little bit. The game is on its own. It's always going to stand, no question about it. When you do almost $11 billion a year, the game is going to sustain itself, and they're going to be around for a long time. But we don't have guys hitting 70 home runs anymore. Home runs drives attendance. I don't think there's any question about it. Yes, a pitcher once in a while who's having a pretty good year will put a few extra people in the seats, but nobody puts people in the seats. There's some guy chasing 65 or 70 home runs. That's what it needs. The races, the home runs, the RBIs, that type of stuff. So, and I think what we're going to see is in the future, we're going to see less and less records set because these guys make so much money, they don't want to play 20 years anymore.
We are joined by Denny McLain. Denny, we go back to in your career, and you have a great story about the fact that you could have signed with the Yankees, but what happened?
Oh, my God. My dad had died a number of years earlier, about 7 years earlier. I was 13 when he died. When all the clubs were coming around, and back in those days, there was no draft. Everybody could come and try to sign you. And we had 10 or 12 teams that came to see us at both American and National League. The Yankees were one of the last teams to come and see us, although the White Sox were the final team. But the bottom line was the Yankees came out. The guy drove up in a beautiful, brand new black Cadillac, just like you would think a Yankee scout would come. Beautiful car. Beautiful black suit, black tie. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. He sat in the house for about an hour, hour and a half, told us how much money we were going to get. We were getting $17,500, which was a lot of money back in 1962, although not as much as you might think. The kicker was he was sitting there and telling us all the great things. And here's the reason why I wanted to be with the Yankees so bad. Mickey Mantle was my idol. I lived and died Mickey Mantle every day. Checked the box score, checked his average every day. I knew if he got a hit this time, I knew exactly what he was going to be hitting the next time he came up. So anyway, the Yankee scout says to us, well, I got a contract here. I got a check here for $17,500. Do we have a deal? And my mom said, "Sir, we're going to wait a day or two. We want to talk about this. We've had so many people here the last 2 days. We need some time to think about it." The Yankee scout says, "Okay, I'll call you tonight or tomorrow, and then we can plan on Denny getting on his first airplane ride and going to our ball club down in Harlan, Kentucky, and enjoying a professional career." We, my uncles and I, just thought we had a deal. My mother, she wanted to think about it. He leaves. About 2 minutes after he drives away, I said to my mother, I said, "Mom, why did you say no to 17.5? Mom, I know you better than that. 17.5, you let the guy leave the house?" She says, "Well, let me tell you something. Did you see his shoes?" I said, "Mom, he had beautiful shoes, beautiful suit, beautiful this, beautiful that." And my one uncle said, I said, "What do you mean, And my mom popped up again. "Did you see the hole in his left shoe?" "What? Mom, what do you mean hole?" "He had a hole in his left shoe." Now, do you think if the Yankees had all that money and that check could or could not be good, that he'd be walking around with shoes with a hole in them? I almost died. So 2 hours later, the White Sox showed up, and the White Sox showed up in mass. They had Nellie Fox came. He brought 3 players with him, that farm director for the White Sox. And we signed that night with the Chicago White Sox because the guy did not have a hole in his shoes.
That's an incredible story.
It is, absolutely. After I got to the big leagues and had a little bit of success, my mother says, "Boy, I really screwed up, didn't I?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Should have let you sign with the Yankees." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I would have loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it." She said, "Because, boy, you were made for New York." And I think she was right.
You were signed by the White Sox, but then you're selected off waivers by the Tigers. Did you ever talk to anybody from the White Sox who were kicking themselves after they let you go, considering those great years you had?
I never really focused on it except for one time. My first game in the major leagues, by the way, was against who? The Chicago White Sox.
And you hit a home run, by the way.
And I hit a home run. The best part of the story is Lopez, the senior they called him, Senior L. Lopez. He's supposed to be this genius when it comes to pitchers. He made the statement the night before that it was announced that I was pitching on this Saturday afternoon. And he said, "Well, we saw him and outside of a little fastball he's got, we weren't very impressed." Something like that. You know, it's a negative comment. And all I wanted to do that Saturday was win. And it had me so mad if by the end of the game, and of course we won the game 4-3, and I pitched 9. So after the ball game, our manager was Charlie Dressen. What happened was, he says, "Come on, we're going to take a walk." So he grabbed me by my arm, grabbed me by my hand, and he walked me all the way over to the visitors clubhouse in Tiger Stadium. And he said, "Where's the senior?" And that's exactly the way he said it. Somebody said, "Senior's in his office." So we walked in there, Charlie and I, and Charlie said to him, "Senior, I want you to meet Mr. McLain because he's going to be for a long time." I had great success against them, but there was never a pitch that I threw against the White Sox that I didn't have other intentions. And all I wanted to do was beat them, beat them, beat them.
You look at your stats from 1965 through 69, 16 wins, 20 wins, 17 wins, 31 wins, 24 wins. Then you add in all of the innings you were pitching. Someone today has to look at that and say, "That's got to be a typo." How could you do that? And people would say the guy's arm would have fallen off. I can't believe he did that. How did that work?
Yeah, it did fall off. Of course, I tore my rotator cuff, started to tear it in 67. Then it got a little bit better because I worked out with it, but then I tore it again in the late 69 season. It never, ever recovered. I still think had I stayed with Detroit and I wasn't traded, I think I would have still won some good games with Detroit. But I got traded to Washington because I had a big argument with the general manager of the club in Detroit. And he just said, I'll show you how I get even. And lo and behold, when they called me about 3-4 weeks later and told me I've been traded to Washington, and I said, "Washington who? Is there a team called Washington?" Joking with him. He says, "Yeah, the Senators." He says, "I'll guarantee you this. If you don't get hurt in Washington, D.C., you will lose 30. I said, "Yeah, okay." And you know what? I lost 22, and I was on the disabled list for 30 days. Just think about that. I was on the disabled list and lost 22. Had I been pitched the entire season, just taking my turn all the time, I think he was right. I think I could have lost 30.
How were you treated during those years, especially after winning 31 games? Were they offering you practically nothing the next year in your contract?
Well, as you know, we didn't have any free agency, so we had nowhere to go. When I won 30, I was making $30,000 a year. And I'd already won, as you said, 16, 17, and 20 already. and I was making 30 grand. Jim Campbell, who was the general manager, president of the club, he called me and said, listen, do me a favor. Come on up here. I've got your contract ready for the next year, 1969, after winning 30. And I said, oh, man, okay. I said, then I've been talking to the newspapers and the media locally about I'm not playing unless I get 100 grand, right? Big mouth McLain is popping off. 100 grand or I'm not playing. Like there was a chance of that happening. So I got to his office. He made me wait 2 hours in the outside office. I went in. He says, here's your contract. Just sign right here. He says, I've given you 60 grand. I said, wait a minute. Well, I said, I want 100, Jim. Come on. I said, we drew 2.67 million people. I said, I shouldn't be paid for that. I mean, every time I went out there the last 10 times in Tiger Stadium, we had 45 to 52,000 people. I can't get paid for that? Give me 100 grand. I said, I'll go to Japan. He said, try to go to Japan. He said, do you think that if we made a phone call to Japan and said you wanted to play there, they would let you play there? I said, I don't know. I said, all I want is to be paid fairly. Because, again, we didn't have any kind of leverage. We're standing there and we're arguing and getting louder and louder. He says, just time out now. So I'm going to tell you one more time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to sign the contract. Then after the 5 minutes, every minute that you don't sign, I'm going to take 1,000 off to 60. I said, what? Is that legal? He says, I don't know if it's legal, but that's what I'm getting ready to do. I've got all kinds of copies of contracts. I can write one up real quick. I said, give me the pen, and I signed it before he could take $1,000 off. Now, on the way out of his office, I turned around to him, and I said, you know what? This is really irritating. I said, this is not right. I said, one day baseball, in some fashion, the players will get even. I said, I don't know when that'll be. I don't know how that will be, but sooner or later, it's going to come full circle. So as I'm going out, he had a door that was like 3 to 4 inches thick. You couldn't have shot a laser gun through the thing. I stopped at the door. I looked at it. I said, Bet, Jim, this is some door, you know? He says, yeah, it's some door. I said, this door probably costs as much as you were going to deduct my salary if I didn't sign. He said, well, maybe. I said, well, listen, the next noise you hear will be your door. So as I started to go, I slammed the door as hard as I could, and the top 2 hinges flew off the wall. So I got a little bit of justice, but what happened, my first paycheck in 1969, he took $1,000 out of my paycheck for the door.
Denny, what do you like about today's game, and what don't you like about today's game?
You know, I like the last 3 innings of any game. The game has turned into a 3-inning game. We're having 7 and 8 pitchers in each game. That I don't like. Until you figure out the strike zone and the umpiring, you are not going to have short games. It's impossible. When you run 7 and 8 pitchers out there, you got a long time to wait for a guy to warm up, to walk to the mound, and do all the things he's supposed to do. So there's no way to shorten up the game unless they go, as I just suggested. The other things they got to do, I think they got to reduce some ticket prices, reduce the prices, number one. Number two, a legitimate doubleheader. Not a day-night where you rip off the public for 2 games in one day, but a regular doubleheader. Just a bit of nostalgia goes a long way. And you know what? Our society is a nostalgic society. We love the things that happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s if you were around. I think they're much more now ignoring the past than they are the future.
You are currently doing a podcast entitled No Filter Sports. Explain what it's all about and why it's become so popular.
We do it out of Detroit. Myself, Eli Zared, who's been a local media guy in Detroit, and then Bob Page, who worked in New York for a little while. The 3 of us do this show, and we're on every day there. What we do is we talk about any and everything in the world of sports. We tried to stay away from this pandemic thing because every time we open our mouth, somebody thinks we're a Republican or somebody thinks we're a Democrat. The good news is nobody's been able to guess yet what we are because we do not do any politics. And we seldom ever set up a guy to whack him. We think there's so many more memories with a guy's history, whether it's baseball, football, basketball. Go online and to put in there Eli and Denny podcast or the name of the show, which is NoFilterSportsPodcast.com.
Denny, thanks for joining us once again. It was tremendous meeting you several years ago. Best of luck to you.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You always give me enough time to tell a couple of good stories. You have a great day, and everybody out there, please stay safe. Don't do anything stupid. We've got 100,000 dead. We need no more.
Thank you very much, Denny.
You too. Bye-bye.